Hey, how's it going, folks? Hope you had a nice Halloween. Even though today's November 1st and I'm recording this on, you know, October 31st, but whatever, that's not important, right? So as you all know, last couple of videos I've been pumping out. Obviously with the toy hunts, we've been like going all out for sure. The last one I did was literally the longest one that I've ever done on this channel. Of course, I filmed it on Tuesday, and it's like a 30-minute long video. I went to Walmart and Target, and and of course I did like an overview of the stuff that I bought. A lot of good stuff out there. I'm not gonna lie. It surprises me because very rarely do you see so many new things come out all at once. And of course we're talking about everything. Ninja Turtles, Marvel Legends, DC Multiverse. NECA, of course, with their products, even GI Joe too. And it's great. It's always fun. And I guess what I really want to talk about a little bit is I guess this is kind of sort of like a part two of like my DC multiverse video that I made, where I started collecting them for the first time. And honestly, I'm generally surprised, like, how come I didn't get into these before? Because even though we talk a lot about Marvel, I like DC too. Don't get me wrong. Without a doubt, if I were to tell you who my favorite DC character is, number one would be Batman. I don't know why. It's either that or, if you grew up playing the Batman Arkham games a lot, you probably have a better understanding, of course. And of course, my number one favorite Marvel character will always be Spider-Man. Maybe, well, I like Ghost Rider too. He's somewhere around that top 10, but you get the idea, right? And even so, yeah, I'm finally starting to get caught up with the new figures. Got the Superior Spider-Man, and honestly, like, this is a banger. They're doing very good so far, Marvel Legends. The figures, they're pumping so many out. They're coming out a little bit slowly, obviously, but I would assume, with the holidays, hopefully we get some new stuff coming along. Uh, you know, and then of course, obviously DC Multiverse. That's a wow. Ever since I got into them, it's like, of course, it's like a brand new journey for me to an extent, because I remember that for a long time I never really found the figures like interesting per se, but that's probably because, like, the characters that I like, they probably didn't really have like the versions that I liked in the past, if that makes sense. I don't know. I remember too that when it came to the toy line itself, I remember a lot of people were like a little skeptical at first, because a lot of the figures that they were pumping out, I know that they released like a couple of like animated figures. I remember they did like an animated Superman and all that, and even, of course, Batman the animated series as well. And obviously looking at them, yeah, I think it's safe to say a lot of their older stuff really wasn't appealing, and I think that was, of course, one of the reasons that it was hard for me to get into the toy line to begin with. And of course, I'm gonna be very honest, I love Batman, so without a doubt, I'm literally staring at the small little collection I've made of my DC Multiverse figures so far, and I'm a little sad that it is just mostly Batman. And I know that that's a very common complaint that people have with the toy line, and that's what I do wanted to talk about today, because like I said, this is kind of like a part two of like my sort of like impressions of the toy line, because like I say, since I'm still kind of sort of new to it, even though I got a lot of figures at this point, but you get the idea. I just kind of want to talk about it a little bit, because Marvel Legends, listen, I love Marvel Legends for sure. Like, don't get me wrong, and of course I'm still gonna keep collecting them. I literally just bought that. Oh heck, even like Carnage too. I finally got the look, this is insane. Like, this needs a toy review somewhere in the future. Not now though. I'm trying to slow down just a little tiny bit. Of course, obviously for November I'm gonna do like mostly Godzilla stuff, but you get the idea. This is pretty sick. But don't get me wrong. Marvel is doing very good, and DC Multiverse, don't get me wrong, they're very good too. But obviously, I understand that they do have like their fair share of complaints. And that, of course, ultimately, that was another thing that kept me away from the toy line to begin with, because a lot of the complaints, they weren't really petty. They were pretty reasonable at best. Now, don't get me wrong. I remember a couple of years ago, for sure, when the Batman came out, and I remember that they made figures for it. Even though I'm willing to admit, they didn't really look all that great, except for the Riddler though. He actually looked pretty decent, even though he only came like with one thing. But of course, obviously, it's always about impressions. That's sort of the idea that I'm trying to get at here. As if you want people to kind of buy your stuff, better make sure, even if the figures are like okay, at least like your presentation too, because again, with Marvel Legends, I know that they've changed a lot over the past couple of years. I know that when it comes to like their package, plastic-free packaging, that became like a whole ginormous mess. I remember that. They stopped doing that, obviously, you know, so now they're trying to find ways around it. Obviously, their boxes are more smaller now. So when it comes to like cost efficiency, all that, you know, I know that pricing is a little bit weird. You know, with Marvel Legends, you're paying up to like $24.99 a figure. Now with the DC Multiverse toy line, I know that it was originally like $20 or so, but unfortunately, even the great Todd McFarlane himself cannot escape from like, you know, price increases and all that. And of course, as time goes on, you know, and obviously with the state of like the country's in, you know, obviously things are gonna get expensive no matter what, so it shouldn't be a shock. So they're around like, I want to say like maybe $21-22 or so. I know he does like a lot of like their these like McFarlane collection, like their weird shits where like they're like $30, even though you're, you know, I think it's, they definitely focus a lot on the characters for sure. You know, I remember Marvel Legends used to get a lot of flack for that, where depending on what character they were releasing, those specific kind of characters, you know, like of course obviously Spider-Man being a prime example, because I remember a while ago during that era of plastic free packaging, they made a figure based off of, you know, the Marvel Spider-Man 2 video game, and people were not happy. Not because the figure was bad. I didn't think it was bad. Some people actually did call it a bad figure. I didn't think it was anything wrong with it, but obviously we're talking like almost $40 for sure. It was like 30 something. I actually did made a video about that a while ago too. I should have looked back on it now, because now I'm really curious to how much it was. People were pissed. They were upset that that figure was that expensive. Not to mention, like, you know, in the packaging that it was, you know, you couldn't really see exactly you couldn't see the figure. It was just like a box, you know, and you're only really like keeping the box for the artwork, you know. And I remember too, I actually did throw out a whole bunch of them, which kind of hurt my heart. But then I remember, if I like the art, isn't that what the comics is for? You know what I mean? So I try to think of it like that. You gotta think smart like that sometimes. I know with DC Multiverse, I mean, I don't know. For me personally, I don't really have a problem throwing away the boxes and all that. You know, I think the figures are at least good enough to where at least I'm satisfied. At least I'll say that for sure about DC Multiverse. And admittedly, like I said, a couple of figures that I bought from them, not too bad. But before I talk about them, let me talk a little bit about Marvel, because, you know, obviously I know that there's been like that conversation as to like, you know, for how much you're paying, is it really like worth it? Now obviously I'll even pull out the Carnage figure, you know, $34.99. He's a deluxe figure. I want to say yes, it's definitely worth it, because he definitely comes with a lot. You know, he's tall, very posable. You know, you get bendy and all that. You know, and the packaging is very nice and collector friendly, at least for me. So of course, that's stuff you have to kind of think about a little bit. You know, but obviously with my problem with DC Multiverse is that, you know, look, I love Batman, I like Superman, you know, and you know the Justice League, hey, pretty cool, I like them, you know. But obviously the thing is though, they were releasing like really weird and bizarre variations that even, you know, most DC fans weren't really like too keen on, if that makes sense. I know that with Batman they released so many different versions of him, people were you know, and like, even I'm willing to admit to, even like didn't he reveal like another new figure that was like a McFarlane's like store exclusive or something? I don't know. They be pumping those shits out like crazy, and I mean, I don't mind. I mean, you know, the grind. You know, if you got some new stuff, you know, if people buy, if they're willing to buy it, I mean, hey, you know, I can't argue with that. You know, but of course, is it really something that people want? You know, I mean, heck, even when I was thinking hard about it, the very first figure that I ever bought was the Joker. It was a Joker figure. I forgot from what storyline it was from. It was from like the Three Jokers storyline. I remember too, and of course I did a video of that showing, and I was like, you know, okay, I got this figure, you know, and I have it in my hand, and it's pretty cool. You know, I actually like it. You know, I remember the biggest thing for sure was that people really hated that they were 7 inches, and for me, I kind of understand, because, you know, I mean, they're really tall figures and they're even kind of beefy at times, you know, even with like how they look, it was slightly exaggerated, which a lot of people of course didn't like. Even I could see it too. I mean, for crying out loud, you know how many Batman figures, not just Batman, but even Superman, do you know how many times that I've seen that his legs are so damn swole? They are thick. They look like freaking fried chicken tender legs, for crying out loud. They look that thick, and that the head was always really small. So that was one thing for sure that people didn't like. And the thing is though, that was more of a, you could definitely tell that was more of a McFarlane thing, because, you know, he's the creator of Spawn. A lot of his Spawn figures were like that, but the thing is, that was his creation, not DC. So it does look kind of weird and awkward when you kind of look at it like that. Did they get better over time? Yeah, but once in a while still, you do get the occasional figure that looks pretty odd looking. But for the most part, I don't know. From what I've seen from the stuff that I bought, or I don't know, who knows? Maybe the figures that I bought specifically, they're actually good. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's like a lot of them that are like hot garbage. And trust me, I've seen my fair share of garbage. Definitely one of the biggest things that they did suffer from a lot is quality control. I remember, the limbs, they would come out pretty easily. And even I'm willing to admit, I bought, I believe it was Doomsday with Kryptonite on him. I remember his arm, for some reason, I can't really get it to move. So when I try to, I always end up popping it out. Thank goodness it didn't break, but now his arm is just stuck in that pose. So you will probably have to maybe heat it up and hopefully it'll have more movement. But it's hard to really say, That's kind of the only hiccup I've run into so far. I mean, nothing broke, at least for the most part. Oh, you gotta give them that, And like I said, when it comes to like their presentation and all that, I think it really just depends on like what version of the characters you like, because obviously there's like so many different versions of like Superman and Batman. I mean, it's hard to even comprehend for sure. The problem is that he does things like super quick. That's the thing. Like he's like ahead of the market. I don't know how he does it with his company, and that's one thing that I really have to give him credit for, is that if they got plans, like they are like they're pumping out stuff like here and there, and like it's hard for us to catch up. Now I don't know if this is true. I've heard that his distribution was is reasonable, meaning that their figures are not like as hard to find as people make it sound and make it seem, in a sense, because yeah, he's pretty big into the whole like trying to find like that hidden figure, the gold label, the platinum, the collectors, and it's like, oh my god, but like, come on, like, give us a break, right? It's kind of one of those scenarios. I know that sounds really weird, but if you collect those kind of figures, if you've been in the game for a while, you probably understand. I mean, luckily for me, I'm a quick learner, so it's like, okay, I could kind of get sort of the sense as to like why some people might like it and some people might not. It also has to do with chase figures. I mean, he does that a lot. Only certain figures I can say is passable, that I would say that they're okay, but not. Yeah, I know that he definitely does that a lot, where it's like, is it really worth spending an extra 20 or 30 bucks? You know what I mean? That's stuff that you gotta think about. So what about like the regular figures? I mean, I know that I will give at least one thing when it comes to like, like I got a Green Lantern here. I actually do like this a lot, and I mean, it's a normal Green Lantern. There isn't really anything special about it, except for the whole weird digital McFarlane thing. Thank God Hasbro doesn't do that, because this I don't really understand. I don't remember if this was like his way of trying to get into NFTs. I'm not exactly sure if that's what it was. I don't really remember. But I remember that was a big thing, because it's like, he had this idea. I remember he was talking with Shardamus Prime about it, how, if you live in Japan and let's say your apartment is so small you can't collect an action figure, so I want to have them just digital. So I'm like, wait a minute, so you mean that you got to get like this weird, like you got to make an account with this McFarlane digital thing, and then you get like your own virtual room where you can put action figures in it? And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not the same thing. Like, no. Also, what happens if your account gets hacked or something, or if like you lose it or whatever? You pretty much lose everything there. I don't know. We're on like some PlayStation rules. Like, if you have a PS4 and you have a couple of downloaded games, and you're like, oh no, if I buy a PS5, I'm not gonna have these downloaded games. And I'm guessing it's like, no, you'll still probably have them as long as your account's okay. But yeah, if your account gets hacked, or if it gets like deleted or something, oh yeah, of course you're gonna lose all those games, which means you lost a lot of money. So I remember one of the things he was doing, he calls it the phygital releases, where basically it came with like a little code as well as the action figure, where I'm like, wait a minute, but you kind of shot yourself in the foot, because I have the action figure now. I'm satisfied. Why are you charging me like an extra $5 just for this tiny little card thing? It's really weird for sure. That's definitely one of the negative things one of the at least things that I feel valid to complain about. It's like, okay, that's kind of as a collector, you really want to have stuff in your hand. I'm playing with like this angel figure, and it's like, I don't know, it's so mystical. Not because he's an angel or a mutant, but it's like, it feels nice. You have it in your hands, in your collection, you can look at it, you can see it, you can see how large it is, you can see like, you can feel the creativity. You don't really get that same thing when you get it in NFT format. Long story short, NFTs are hot garbage. So no, we don't like that. The figures we got is perfectly fine the way they are. As for the DC Multiverse line, listen, I like them. Don't get me wrong. I mean I mean the sculpting, the detailings, is pretty decent at best. I know that, like I said, with the proportions, it really does depend on like the character itself, because not every version of Batman is gonna be swole or even Superman. And yeah, okay, for Superman, I get that maybe on some occasions in the comics, maybe his head does look a little bit small, So you really gotta look into it like in an art format. That's what I'm trying to say, So for an example, Thor, like yeah, comic book Thor, he's tall, not MCU Thor. The MCU Thor, he's not really that tall in real life because his action figures tower everybody else. But realistically, that's not even true. So it's like, okay, that's more of a give or take thing. But with the DC Multiverse stuff, it's a little bit, there's a bit of a weird kind of like thing with the sizes and all that. Obviously, not every version is going to be, I know that with their Justice League figures, the older ones at least, the sizes were ridiculous. Like Flash being taller than Batman. I'm sorry, no, I can't get over that. Luckily, their newer ones that they announced based off of the Snyder cut or whatever it's called, those look like fantastic for sure. Those look great. I mean, the whole chase figure thing, that's still pretty annoying. Like the armored Batman, yeah, I want it, but why do you make a separate version where he comes with like the weapon with the kryptonite stick on or whatever you call it? Like, come on now, you could have at least put that with the original figure. But whatever, don't get me wrong. This toy line, just like everything else, does have problems, but it's still surprisingly pretty solid. I'm shocked at how nice these are, and I want to keep looking for more. Obviously, I'm gonna buy the ones that I know. Of course, that's always been my biggest rule. I'm not gonna get every single figure I find, or because I want to know the characters firsthand before I really think about it. Like, hell yeah, I'm gonna buy whatever Batmans I can as long as I can afford it. Same thing for Marvel Legends. That's of course one thing that I need to say about both toy lines. You don't have to collect every single thing that they have. As long as you know the characters and you kind of understand it in a sense. If you want to buy something, even if you're not entirely sure about it, I think it's okay. Like, if you want to explore, that's something that I definitely want to talk about in a separate video. Where let's say maybe you want to like He-Man. That's what I did. I only know a little bit about it, bought some figures, got interested. I watched the old cartoon, and now I really like He-Man. So of course you gotta think of it like that. But I'll say that for another video because this has gone on far enough. But for the most part, have I really moved on from Marvel Legends? Obviously not, But DC Multiverse, I actually do enjoy it a lot, surprisingly. So I hope they do keep making more figures. And yes, I'll buy all their Batman. So yeah, I'm guilty of that. Fight me. Anyway, that's about it. So hopefully, next videos you'll see is of course, I'll definitely try to get on that conversation about exploring a little bit more for sure. And then of course I gotta get right on that toy review for the movie Monster Series Godzilla figure, specifically the 1954 version. I don't want to hold off on that for too long because it'd be pretty nice to actually release it on Godzilla Day. So look forward to that. As always, thank you guys for watching, and please like and subscribe. And yeah, that's about it. See ya.